The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is LaDonna Miller. I am here with Our Journey. Our Journey, it's a segment or show in which we each week dissect a particular mental health concern or diagnosis or issue that's come up. Typically in a session, or unless a viewer or listener submits it, or unless you kind of comment or send something over, what typically happens is I go and identify something that we're discussing in therapy, maybe in a group setting or as an individual, that's come up as a common theme. So that way we can discuss it because it's something that's going on for multiple people. All right. So a little bit about me. I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Illinois, in which I primarily work with adults and adolescents with ADHD, OCD, and anxiety. And so what we're going to do today is dissect through grief, what it looks like in the grieving process. And then, of course, we're not just going to gather that information. We're going to learn how to support an individual when they're in the grieving process. Now, we're not only going to talk about when someone dies, right? So this is not like, oh, poor them, they died, this person passed away. How do we process this? But more so of the different types of grief, what that's going to look like, the stages of grief, and being able to help yourself along if you're the person who's maybe grieving a particular situation, or for us to be able to help a friend or a loved one out, okay? And so for us to identify the stages of grief, what we're going to do is go through Dr. Kubler-Ross's ideas or theories of there being 5 stages of the grieving process, right? Now, we did a segment a little bit earlier, sometime this year about this, but I found that it would be much helpful for us to bring this up again, for us to dissect a bit into it, for those who may have missed it, and to gather or gain a new perspective as a refresher if you're someone who listens weekly, okay? And so what she outlined is the protocol or the procedure of individuals dying and later applying it to someone else's death. Right now, what I am going to say, right, like I obviously have to give my disclaimer, so I like to give it at the top of the show and then remind you throughout, right? I am a therapist. I am not your therapist. We're going to gather this information for educational purposes, right? This isn't necessarily something that I am prescribing for you. That's what a treatment plan is going to be for. That's something that's going to be specifically designed and created for you. Now, if you are a client of mine, right, whether in a group or an individual setting, if this is something that you'd like to discuss, any topic, right, definitely bring it up and we'll create a strategy that's specific to you. But rather for everyone else, sit back, gather the information, maybe grab a notebook or something like that. So that way you can gather everything that you'd like and put it in a good space. Or maybe you're just really good at taking some mental notes. All right. And so, but this is educational for you. All right. And rather not something I am prescribing for you to do. All right. And so the stages though of grief, it is dissected and it's here as those 5 things that would take place, right? It's the 5 things in which she theorizes that it happens, right, in the process. And I found for myself for it to be true, especially when processing through with clients, right? Like obviously when we're learning this, we may not particularly have something in front of us, right? And we're applying it to maybe our lives or the example that either the textbook or either her literature shared. But now being in it for years, I'm able to see what that actually looks like, right? And so it's not necessarily happening for everyone in the presented order, but oftentimes it happens for everyone, maybe a little bit scattered, but it occurs. All right. So the 5 stages, very quickly, before we hop into what each of them are specifically, just at a higher level, they're denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. All right. So now we're going to hop into what denial looks like and gathering some examples of what that's going to look like for us. Okay. And so denial is typically shown at believing that there's a mistake that your loved one is actually gone, right? Or really making yourself so busy that you are unable to accept it, right? You pile up a lot of work projects, you pile up a lot of chores, so that way you don't have any control of your feelings, right? So that way you're not feeling lost. You can't feel that loss that you've experienced because you can put all these tasks and all the other stuff there, right? Another thing would be to continue to speak about the loved one as if they're still alive, right? Like in present tense, we're talking about like, yeah, they are blah, 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 even though like they're deceased, right? Or they're no longer here. Likewise, if we're not talking about a particular individual passing away, like for an example, if we're using like losing a job, right? Like that's one that I think may be helpful for people, right? And you're talking about that being or no longer at that workplace, right? And it was some type of separation that kind of got you terminated, right? And so being able to transition and to go, and you're still talking about it in present tense, like, well, at my job, blah, 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 right? Because I called a client in the middle of that, like, at your job, you got a job? Are you still there? Right? Or maybe, for example, you have separated or terminated a relationship, right? That's another common one that I see where people talking like, oh, yes, my partner, my boyfriend is, my da 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 da, and you're giving examples and you're going forward in the conversation as if the two of y'all still together, right? You've acting like y'all still together, even though everybody know that you're not, and I know we in this session that y'all not together, but you're in denial, right? You're wanting it to still happen, right? Or you're adding on extra things to do, going out with friends, really trying to erase or kind of forget about that being something that's there. You don't want to face those feelings of loss or sadness that is gone, right? So it's referring to the difficulty in comprehending the reality of that loss, right? That's what Dr. Kubler-Ross would say that is, right? And it definitely can take a while sometimes, right, to wrap your head around this being the thing that's occurred, right? Because most times it's a significant loss. It's not something that's like, oh, I lost the pencil that I just got, in a free bag or something, right? It's not something that's small. This is something that is a significant thing for you that you've lost. And you are the only person who can determine how significant a particular thing is for you, right? Like, because that pencil, if maybe you got it and that mean a lot to you. But I know for me, I get a lot of goodie bags and they give me pencils, pens, sanitize, stuff like that. And it's not a significant loss. Right. But the point being, that's what the denial stage of grief would look like. Right. So the next stage in which Dr. Kubler-Ross identifies, again, in no particular order, is anger. Right. So anger is it's a perfectly natural response in the case of loss. Right. It can be it can be kind of directed at a variety of different kind of sources or things. You're angry, right? And it's not like, okay, I'm angry at this person. No, it could be at a myriad of things, right? And so she also identifies or states that it can also manifest as something like blame, right? You're having blame and you feeling like that someone else is at the fault of your loss, right? So oftentimes that's like, when the person gets a diagnosis, I'm going to use kind of a sick person right now, right? Or a dying person or a person who is deceased at this point. Something goes on and they pass away, right? And Now it's the hospital's fault. Now you mad at the hospital. You need to get the medical records. You need to do this. The doctors didn't do that. This staff didn't do this. And you just mad, right? Everything that you could think of, you huffing and puffing, okay? And because you don't know what else to do because you're angry, right? Or a particular thing, right? Let's go back to you lost your job, right? You're terminated from your place of work. That may look something like, hey, I'm over here, and now you placing the blame on your coworkers who wasn't even on your team, right? And you over here with a whole scenario or issue that you saying that it's the concern. When you can't be mad at them and you just are making a big steam and huffed and puffed and frustrated, and you blaming it on them of if they didn't say this or if they didn't do that, then I will have my job. And then you mad at the world because you're angry because you lost, right? You have experienced a loss. And so being able to know and understand, hey, this is something that it's okay, right? And so being able to know and to process, right? Same stage. How about if we were processing through it being a relationship that you've terminated, right? Or that's been terminated. And so being able to go through that and know that like, hey, this is some anger that I'm experiencing, but sometimes we're not able to be as in tune to what's going on, right? But that anger, that's the stage of grief for the terminated relationship. It might look something like you being upset with whomever, right? A member of your family, right? Your children. I see that a lot, right? Where there are there's clients and they have children and they maybe have been in a relationship and then the relationship ended and then they're angry at their children because they feel as if they're the reason why the relationship ended. And now you mad and you placing the blame on your children, or maybe you're placing the blame on some external things. And it's not always going to look like, oh, they mad, they punching the wall. Ho, ho, ho. Anger doesn't always manifest like that, right? Like sometimes we can be angry and we shut down. Right, we're reclusive or maybe withdrawn. You may also experience, or anger may also be manifested by being frustrated, being angry, not necessarily always yelling and screaming, but it is also manifested in that way. It may physically be manifested in some hitting of inanimate objects, or maybe even people. If it's hitting people, we can discuss that later. Figuring out some ways to remove yourselves from domestic situations, but being able to navigate and to know, hey, this is something that's anger, right? So that's why we're gathering this information. Y'all know I like to give you the why. Why do we need to know this, LaDonna? What's going on, right? And so as with any other stage or point of grief, anger it's a part an emotion that you can feel, and it's a reaction to loss, right? Not just to death, but to loss. And you're able to experience and thrive through it once you're able to identify what it is that's going on, all right? So what we're going to do right now is we are going to take a brief pause, all right? We're going to take a pause so that way we don't have information overload. When we come back, we're going to navigate through some of the other stages of grief. And then after that, what we're going to do is identify how we're going to process through the grief. Hang tight. We'll be back.
I'm black and I'm mad. I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Yes, I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. It doesn't matter how you view me. God created me for who I am. It doesn't matter what you say about me. I'm happy with who I am. I matter. I'm black. Yes, I matter. God created me to be who I am. Oh, yes, He did. Oh, I'm black and I matter. Look at me, I'm black and I matter. God created me to be who I am. So glad He did. It doesn't matter, hey, how you view me. God created me for who I am. It doesn't matter what you say about me. I'm happy with who I am. It's not about color. It's not about race. It's God's amazing grace. Red, yellow, black to white. We all process in His sight. Oh, let's stand together. Come on, let's stand together. Somebody ought to stand together. You ought to stand together. Hey, Chicago, let's stand together. Let's love one another. Let's stand together. Let's hold one another. Let's love one another. We ought to stand together. Against all. Let's stand together. We are living in hard times. Oh, let's stand. Let's stand together. Come on, let's stand. Let's stand together. Listen, for God I live. Hey, for God I die. I'm willing to stand. Stand together. Are you willing to stand? Let's stand together. All over the world. Red, yellow, black or white. We are precious in His sight, y'all. Listen, Martin Luther King, y'all. He stood for freedom. Hey, come on, let's stand. Let's stand together. Oh, hallelujah.
Right. Welcome back. Right. For those of you who are just joining us, this is our journey, and we are processing through what it looks like to grieve, right? What the grieving process is, what the stages are, and we're going to then hop into how we can assist ourselves and individuals who we love during the process, right? Now, first, what we're doing is we are going through Dr. Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. We have first gone through the first stage, which they are not necessarily in order because it would depend on the individual, but these are the stages, right? Not that they're going sequentially, right? So we went through denial, basically ignoring that a particular thing is gone on because you're trying to make it seem like it didn't happen, right? You're denying it. Just as basic as it sounds, right? We went through some examples, being able to know that you're trying to shuffle through, add extra stuff to your schedule, maybe blame someone else, right? That's going into the anger, right? You're blaming other people, you're upset, you're frustrated. It's everybody's fault that this happened, right? That the person maybe died, or maybe that you've lost your job, or the relationship has ended, right? But it's always some type of anger that's then getting ready to be placed there, right? So the third stage of grief that we're going to go through today is bargaining, right? So bargaining sometimes happen before the loss has already occurred, right? Oftentimes it's experienced, or I see it when like somebody's sick, right? And they know that they are maybe close to passing, and the individual begins, they start to make barters, right? Especially you see it a lot in kind of in different faiths, or maybe if a person is not necessarily kind of the most grounded individual, they begin to pray and bargain, right? They start to say, oh my God, if you please allow this person to stay alive, I'm going to do XYZ, right? Or maybe they may speak to the universe, or they may begin bargaining with themselves, bargaining with other individuals to say, excuse me, if this particular thing comes to pass, if you're able to stop it from coming up, stop it from happening, I'm going to do something else, right? Typically something like, oh, somebody had this cancer diagnosis, maybe they're a little concerned, and now you bargain, oh, if you take away the cancer, if you take away this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do this. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do. Or you may see like, okay, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to like, oh, if you get me right at this time, I'm never going to do these things again, right? How many of y'all are familiar, right? That's something that come up for you like, oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it's like, okay, let's think on that again, right? Like, what is it that you can maybe think on that's going to be a little bit different? What is it that you can maybe strategize in, which is not necessarily going to be a headache, but you decide to bargain, right? And it happens oftentimes. That's why it's part of the stages, right? And so, or you may begin kind of having these questions kind of afterwards, right? You have these kind of like after the fact things where they already passed away, you already lost your job, you maybe already lost a relationship, but then you start going back on, oh, that's those shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? That's what this is. That's starting to come up, right? Like, oh man, if we would have just went to a different doctor, none of this would have happened. I should have been doing blah, 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 and everything would have been all good. And it's like, okay. Or you seeing like, oh, well, you know, if I wouldn't have had, you know, different friends around, and if I would have been, you know, closer to my boyfriend, then we wouldn't have been broke up, because I should have spent more time with him, and I shouldn't have been doing this and that, and then I wouldn't have never had this relationship to end. Or something like this, if this is a work example, right? If we're using a termination of work, oh, I should have been doing blah, blah, blah. Then this wouldn't have happened. I knew I should have done extra instead of just doing the bare minimum or what I should have been doing. And this one will come up for me, right? And it comes up, right? Or if I hadn't gotten this thing here, if I hadn't have gotten this particular procedure, they wouldn't be ill. If I hadn't have done it's all of those in retrospect type of things, right? So either bargaining takes place either prior to the loss, right? Like you kind of know, you get wind that the loss is coming up, and now you're trying to, you know, make it not be the loss. And so now being able to operate through with that is something that's going to be important, right? So sometimes at the beginning, before the thing happened, you begin to bargain. Sometimes after it's over, you're trying to bargain and make it right, right? And so sometimes it might not look like bargaining, but that's what it is. So the person who I really like to air to, especially the way in which they break down this particular stage, the bargaining stage, Dr. Jossel says, Dr. Jossel rather says that the thinking is something that's similar, right? It's that similar thinking. It's a similar thing that comes up. It's there, and we engage in a different type of mental gymnastics, I believe. So yeah, a different mental gymnastics to try to undo something that we can't change. That's the basic gist of what it is, right? Like, so you're going through this to do all these hoops, all this stuff, flipping this way, doing all of this, because you're trying to make it seem like it didn't happen, right? You're trying to undo the thing that's already done or that's getting ready to take place, but you can't really change it. But that's what you got in your mind, right? So the fourth stage is depression, right? Now, again, this is not necessarily in any particular order, but it is something that's there. Give me a moment. I'm going to take a little bit of water. Let's see here. So the fourth stage, it is depression, right? It's natural to be sad when you have experienced a loss, right? It's natural to be sad. It's even natural to be depressed, right? Because you've experienced a loss, whether expected or unexpected, you've still lost, all right? If it's a job, if it's a person, right? Like a person that died, if it's a person that's moving themselves out of your life, so maybe a termination of or ending of a relationship, friendship, something of that sort, right? Being able to know and to understand what that looks like for you, right? And being able to know, hey, this is the thing. And this is how we can change or strategize to move forward once we know this information, right? So it's okay once you've experienced a major loss, right? And so what that may look like, right? Like so the symptoms or the things that we can look for is maybe the person is now experiencing difficulty in making decisions. Or maybe they lost all hope, like right there experiencing hopelessness or helplessness, like no hope for the future, not able to look forward or move forward because they are in a down mood, right? Maybe they're having difficulties in concentrating, not able to stay focused and be able to navigate through the particular things that's set up in front of them. If you're saying that that may be a concern or an issue that comes up. Or maybe they're feeling directionless or lost or confused about life, or maybe not necessarily able to move forward or to know what it is in which they could be doing or they should be doing because they're really just in that down mood and that depressed mood and unable to move through that or move past that, right? And so it's definitely something that is important to know, like, hey, we want to strategize, we want to know like what this is going to look like, how we're going to be able to move this, how we can do some things. But how do we do it, right? What do we do to make it work? And so once we know that a person is grieving, we're going to want to assist and help. Right. So that's going to be something we're going to hop into in just a short few moments. Right. So I do want to just complete really kind of what depression looks like. We're going to go through the 5th stage, take a break, and then we're going to go to what we're going to do about it. Right. Because I always love the what we're going to do about it part. Right. I'm always jumping ahead. So I'm going to stay here where we are right now. So right. So like depression, that grief-related depression, right? Because it's going to be a little different than the depression that we discussed maybe a few weeks ago, right? So the grief-related depression may also be something that's physical, right? So it still may look like just the regular old depression that we talked about, but now this is related to grief, right? And so you may notice or may experience, if it's you may experience some aches and pains, more aches and pains. You may even notice a change in the sleep pattern, right? It may be something different that's going on that is changing all these things. And that something different is you've experienced some type of loss, or that person, if it's not you, have experienced some type of loss. They've lost a relationship. They've lost a job. They've lost a loved one. They've lost things, they've experienced a significant loss, which has changed or shifted the trajectory in which the individual was moving, right? Now, I do want to be clear that the depressive stage or part of grief is a lot different than the depression that we talked about before, the major depressive disorder, right? Where the person is depressed and they depressed like every day and they're going to do some things. So this kind of depression, we're going to treat it a little bit differently. I'm not going to tell you, oh, you sad because the person died. Let's go do all of these different things. Yes, some of them are going to assist and help, but typically this may be acute depression, right? It may be there for a short period of time. Not that grieving is going to be something that's going to take place very quickly and be done, because these are stages, right? We may experience these stages all in the same week. You may experience these stages across months, maybe a couple years. It may be even longer than that, right? Everyone's grieving process is going to be different, right? And we're approaching it right now from a standstill point, or a point in which our vantage point of saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is how it occurs. This is how it may affect you, right? And you're gathering some pinpoints or some bullet points to know, okay, this is something that's here. Let me go and gather some assistance based upon what I've learned, right? So it's going to be looking a little different as opposed to knowing those emotional things, the cognitive and the physical symptoms are going to be different. It may not be as noticeable or recognizable as a distinctive depressive or depression disorder in which we have in the DSM, right? It may be something which is like our Bible for mental health, right? Which is where we're going to get the thing and you get all the diagnosis. So it may not necessarily look exactly like that in order to do it. So that's always why when we are doing a depression index or a depression assessment to check to see kind of how a person is, we're asking to see like, has someone recently passed? Is this something, right? Because that's normal. You said you love something gone, right? As opposed to maybe some natural factors that is going on that we just maybe have that, right? Now, the thing that I will say though is that if it is not addressed, right? If you're not addressing the grief appropriately, right? Like I always encourage people, we need to have some grief counseling. If we're not addressing the grief appropriately, it does, however, lead to or could lead to a depressive disorder, right? More often it is typically major depressive disorder, right? If it's going to lead to something like that, which is always why you're hearing me say we should have some understanding that this is what we need, right? Because beforehand, you didn't know this was something that you should check out. You didn't know this was something that you needed to get ready to check to see that you should have. But now you're gathering this information and you're going to be able to use it moving forward, right? You're going to be able to use it to thrive, to know, now that I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, this is what I'm going to do. That's leading us on to our next point, right? So the final stage of grief is acceptance. Again, this isn't necessarily in any particular order. These are the stages. It's not like steps, right? They're not necessarily sequentially occurring in this part, right? Or point to point. So acceptance, right? What is acceptance? All of these words is just what it sounds like. I told y'all, we're not coming here with some big philosophical words or things that we can't necessarily all understand. And so Dr. Kubler-Ross does a great job in just breaking this down and giving us words that we all can understand, know, learn, and move through, right? So the fifth stage is that acceptance, right? So that's something that the sadness, the sense of loss, we know it's not going to ever really like go away, but it may fade, it may dwindle down. And with the acceptance stage, that's when you're learning to live with that loss, right? You're learning to know and to thrive and to know, you know what? Things are going to be okay. Yes, I have experienced a particular loss. Yes, I've lost a significant person in my life. Yes, I've lost this job or this career that I really loved. Like, yes, this relationship that I had is now ended or is now terminated. But I'm okay with it. I'm able to move forward. I'm able to thrive. I'm able to live with it, right? That's what the acceptance stage is all about. That's what it looks like, all right? Right? Like it's a newfound ability to acknowledge that this has occurred and this is how you're going to move forward, right? And you can have joy and sorrow kind of working next to each other, right? And knowing like, okay, I can live through joy and sorrow and I'm hopeful. I can move. I can thrive. I'm not stuck in a particular place, right? That's what acceptance is going to look like, right? And so at this stage, you're not going to be immobilized or stuck in a particular place where you are, you're stuck because of your sadness. You're stuck because of your loss, because you're able to move through it. You're able to thrive. You're able to know and understand that something is going on, right? So an example would be, usually you at an earlier stage or different parts of the grief process, You may have heard a song played on the radio, or you saw a billboard, or you went to a restaurant or something like that, right? That you're used to doing with your loved one who's passed away, all right? And you used to doing that. And before, when you would see it, or you would go to it, or you would hear it, you probably would break down into tears, or you'd be so sad that the next day you just were no good. You just were of no help, because you were stuck in a place. You were sad, you were depressed, you was crying, you was feeling all those different emotions because you hadn't appropriately processed through the grieving stages, right? So you weren't at the acceptance point. And so, but now when you're in this acceptance, you can listen to the song and jam out and hear the words like you heard them before. And you might even hear some new words. You're able to go to that particular restaurant. You're able to pass by that particular sign, and you're not feeling that same feeling anymore. You're not feeling like, oh my goodness, I'm over here down, I'm having this thing come up. That's not there, right? Not that you're not sad. Not that you're not remembering that they passed away. Not that you're not remembering that the job that you had, that you no longer have it. Not that you're not remembering like, oh, this is our favorite restaurant that I went to with my boyfriend before we broke up, but we're not going there no more. But you can go now. You're able to go. You're able to thrive. You're able to know, you know what? That has ended. You've processed like, okay, this is over. I've lost that, but I can move forward. I can do, right? It's a sense of understanding that there is some finality to it, right? That the thing has, it's come, it's there, and it's occurred, right? And being able to move forward from that very point, right? Now, I know you want to know, how do you get to the acceptance part? How do you get ready to thrive? How do you get ready to work through it? Hang tight, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to pause for a couple moments, right? We're going to listen to some music. When we come back, we're going to process through. We're going to get the answers to how we are able to thrive, survive, and grow through grief. All right, so hang tight. We'll be back in a few moments.
In this season of uncertainty, sickness and fear, riots and racial injustices, this pandemic that has created world unrest, my brothers and my sisters, my prayer is that the Lord would keep our minds and our hearts stayed on Him. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. There's a place in God, a place called peace, a place called rest, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. I don't want to give the enemy no ground, because no matter what we go through, we have a God we can turn to. Just remember, it all belongs to Him. My mind belongs to You, Lord. My mind belongs to You. My mind belongs to You. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. My body belongs to You, Lord. Oh, my body belongs to You. Oh, my body belongs Lord. My soul belongs to you. My soul belongs to you. I don't want to give the enemy. I don't want to give the enemy. I don't care what the enemy says. I don't care what the devil says. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. 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 I don't want to give the enemy no ground.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, thank you for joining and tuning in. This is our journey, and what we are discussing today is the grieving process. What we have previously discussed is the 5 stages of grief and being able to operate and know how to thrive through them, right? So we had denial, basically trying to ignore the things that have come up, being able to understand and process, hey, this is what's there. But typically during that stage or that part, you're not necessarily in tune to knowing, hey, this is there. And being able to push forward, right? Like you're kind of just like ignoring it, maybe coming up with other things. Then we talk through the anger portion, right? The anger stage of grief, being upset or frustrated. Sometimes it may manifest in physical, psychological. It may even go into blame, right? Blaming yourselves, typically blaming other people as to the reason that the particular thing has ended, right? If the person's life is maybe expired, the relationship has terminated, if there's like maybe like a friendship or a romantic relationship, or even a relationship with an employer, right? Maybe that may look a little bit different for each person of how that termination process looked like, right? And so after anger, then we process through what that bargaining may look like, right? So sometimes it's bargaining while the person may still be alive, or while they're, you kind of have like previous knowledge of knowing that a particular incident is going to occur, but being able to know and to understand how things are, right? Like, so you're bargaining if they stay alive, I want to do this, or, all these different things. If I can keep the job, I can do this. But it may also look like the shoulda, coulda, wouldas after the fact, right? Then we process through being able to the person being depressed, right? Depression, right? And being sad, being withdrawn, maybe having loss of really being able of comprehension, or maybe memory, recall, maybe not being able to concentrate, or those things. And the important part about that stage is that we're wanting to address particularly really grief in general. So that way it's not leading to a depressive disorder, right? A depression disorder. One that it's commonly leading to is going into major depressive disorder, right? And so that's like basically when you are depressed for a long period of time, right? For a particular issue, or maybe several issues, right? And then the last and final one, which that would typically be the final one, is acceptance, right? And so the other 4 may happen at any particular time. Acceptance is typically the last one, because you accept and you're not having those other things, right, that are going on. All right. But Dr. Kubler-Ross, who's the theorist behind the stages of grief, does theorize that the Stages may happen out of order. They are not necessarily a sequential way in which an individual may experience grief. And she identifies that the grieving process is definitely different for each and every individual, right? So it's going to look different. So now what we're doing is we are getting some information on how we're going to push through. How do we survive, thrive, and grow through grief, right? Like, what do we do now that we grieve? And since I done told you what they look like, what we should be doing, let's figure out how we're going to process through this grief, right? So the first thing is giving yourself that grace. You know, I'm going to tell you that, right? Like, allow yourself to grieve. Give yourself that grace. If it's a friend, family member, let them know it's okay to grieve. It's okay to go through all those feelings, right? It's okay to be mad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to do all of the stuff. Grace. All right. That's the first thing. The next thing is going to be able to give yourself that patience, right? So we're going to have grace. We're going to have patience. We're going to know that this entire process is going to take some time, right? It's not like this is get through your grief in 2 days. Get through it and it's going to look different. Depending on the magnitude, and you determine the magnitude, right? The person who's experienced the loss, they're the ones who are going to be able to determine how significant is this? What is the magnitude of this to me, right? And no one can define that but that person themselves. And being comfortable with no one else can define that. And so being able to thrive, being able to know like, hey, this is something that's coming up. This is something that's here. Let's process through that, right? And so giving that patience to know this does take time. So other than grace and patience, LaDonna, what else do we need? How else do we push through this? How else can we survive, thrive, and grow, right? And this may sound counterintuitive because it's going to sound like something I tell people not to do, but keep yourself busy. Find something that you like to do, something that's like enjoyable to you. Don't just start making busy work, right? Like, okay, now I'm going to, paint the floor with a toothpick. That's not the kind of busy, unless you're a painter or artistic person and that's something that you having fun, painting the floor with a toothpick. Don't do that one. Right? Find something that's meaningful to keep yourself busy, right? Find something that's meaningful that allows you to experience joy, right? We're finding ways that you're able to experience that joy. You're able to experience something that's different and then be able to process on, right? So find something to keep yourself busy so that way you're not just thinking about this grief at a particular point or moment. Because we're trying to get you to that acceptance point, right? But even at the acceptance point, you're gonna need something else to occupy your time, right? Like you lost the person that was significant to you, you might have some more free time. You lost your job and you ain't got another one, or your job is doing something different and you got some extra time, you're gonna need something to occupy your time, right? You sitting over here single than $1 bill, right? Because you ain't in that relationship no more, you're gonna need something to occupy your time. But don't go paint the floor with toothpicks if that's not something that you enjoy doing. Find something that you enjoy doing. Find a hobby. If you don't know a hobby, right? You don't have anything to do because you were so consumed with a particular thing. First off, we should process through that. Why was you so occupied or preoccupied with one particular person or thing? That is a concern. However, we're not going to talk about that right now. You lost them now, so we're going to process through that grief, right? That grief is looking like, okay, this is the thing. This is how we're going to process through it, right? You found you something to do, something to occupy your time that you enjoy, and you are experiencing joy, excitement, fulfillment, some things that maybe you had in those particular relationships or that person provided that you don't have anymore. But you're like, it's not a replacement, right? Like I'm not saying, oh, you can go replace it if you find you something to do. I'm not here to tell you that, right? But you are able to gather something and then move with it, right? Like, I kind of like this. Let me get ready to rock this out. I can do this. Right? And being able to know, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Now, the next thing, if you're one of my clients and you listen and you hear this, you see this, you know what the next thing going to be. Other than the therapist. I'm going to say that one for last today. I like to put that usually at the top of the last. Use a All right, so there's audio journals, right? You can download them in your app store or Play Store, whatever kind of like device that you have. So if you're not one to write with pen and paper, you can get something that you can talk into, right? And it records, put a little password on it. You might have to pay for some of them. They like range from like $1.99 to like $9.99. Just to buy it. It's not like a monthly thing. They got a lot of different ones, right? They're not paying me to advertise them, so I'm not going to tell you the names. Just type it in, and there's a lot of different ones out there. You see what's going to work for you, right? Or you can get the ones that you can type into, right? You go ahead, it may give you a prompt, or you can just kind of free write. It's there. There's those options if you don't want to go and grab yourself a handy dandy notebook or a journal or a diary or something. But what you're needing to do, this journaling is going to be a powerful way for you to process through that pain, that loss, that experience that you have, so that way you can put that pen to the paper, your voice to the speaker, your hands to the keyboard. So that way you're able to know, hey, I need a way to express this out. Now, if you got this information for your loved one, they probably gonna think you're trying not to talk to them. But tell them I told you this is a good idea, because it works for my clients, right? It is research that says that this is a very effective way of being able to process through some things, right? Spend some time with yourself, right? That's what that journal is going to be. It's an intimate time that you're able to spend with yourself, participating and engaging in those feelings and those thoughts that you're having. That's why it's going to be helpful. Not telling you it's Dear Diary style, like Dear Diary, I went to the store today. That's not what you're journaling about. You're journaling about those feelings that you're having. Maybe you want to talk about how it felt when you went to the store because you went to the store by yourself and you used to go with somebody else. That's another story, right? But that's this different, right? We're writing about those intimate feelings, having yourself that opportunity to be real with yourself. All right, that's going to be the plus side of journaling. That's going to be helpful for you. All right. Another way that you can move, thrive, and grow through grieving is going to be getting some of that physical movement in, right? Exercise, right? So you go to the gym, you'll do some walking, some jogs, some running. Maybe you might want to do like an exercise class, a dance class, yoga, Pilates. Get some of that movement in a few times a week, if not every day. They recommend about 30 minutes each time that you do it. So that way it's kind of registering, not just for that physical thing to give yourself something to do, but more so psychologically, so that way we can balance out that serotonin and dopamine levels, which are the chemicals in which are responsible for happiness and sadness and everything that's operating within our brain. So we want to be equally balanced, right? And knowing how to do that, right? And so knowing that you may need to do that and then switch things up, right? Being comfortable with being flexible and switching things up, because you might not be able to do that same pattern. If you're willing to change, you're willing to know, hey, some stuff might switch up on us. Some stuff might not look the same. Let me do this. Let me do that. Cool. Rock with it, right? If that's the thing that you have. And so, but being able to be flexible after you've experienced that loss is going to be helpful, not only for you, but those individuals who are around you. Okay. The last and final thing, if you're a frequent listener, you already know what it's going to be. Seek help, right? Seek care, so that way you can identify with a professional what that is going to look like. I am a professional. I can't be everyone's professional. Go ahead and reach out. If you don't have a way to contact a therapist, reach out to your primary care provider, your normal doctor. They'll be able to assist you. If you have some medical insurance, you can also reach out to them. They'll be able to assist you in identifying an appropriate provider for you. All right. You may just go to Google and you see someone you like, you can reach out. Right. It's always some resources, but I am encouraging you to seek some professional help after you've experienced a loss. So some grief counseling, all right, or some grief therapy, or when you are projecting a loss, right? You may be in a stage that you know that maybe someone's going to pass, maybe some things are coming up. So that way you can smoothly transition into grief counseling, right? That's something that we can work through and create a special plan that's designed just for you. All right. So with that being said, I am all done sharing today. But if you do happen to have any questions, always feel free to reach out. I do hope all is well with everyone and that you have a wonderful remaining of your day.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ. WVTC Allsip Chicago.